Hello again, everybody. This is Steve coming to you with another presentation about the universe of Earthfleet that backs up the now 7 books, the 4 books of the saga and the 3 extended universe that are currently out. Like I've said in previous videos, the UGW is kind of the intergalactic version of the UN, just different. It has a lot of different races in it. They try to keep the peace, but really keeping the peace among 9 very powerful, very large republics and empires is not an easy task. The UGW has its headquarters in a solar system outside of Gaekvan territory, because the Gaekvan territory stretches all the way out to the outer rim of the galaxy and a little bit beyond, and it stretches inward up to the neutral zone. They have a neutral zone where basically it's an area that you can pass through if you have a specific reason to be there, like you're heading to the UG homeworld or UGW homeworld of Cebius, or you have to go out and rescue a ship that drifted out there, or whatever reason it is you have to be out there. You can go out there, but you're really not supposed to be out there, and you're definitely not supposed to stay or colonize it or anything like that, because that neutral space is a buffer between the big republics and empires of the 9 and the galactic core, which is super dangerous, because it's full of black holes and other weird phenomenon from that's either caused by or works in conjunction with all of the supermassive stars and the black holes that are out there. The center of our galaxy has the single largest black hole in the entire galaxy. So that's another reason why they try to keep them out there, because it gets really dangerous when you go into the galactic core. So they have a little buffer space so that you can go up there and no further unless you have permission to go further, and you can't stay any longer than you're allowed to. Whoops. Anyhow, Cebius, like I say, was the homeworld of the UGW, sits out in neutral space, and it is this doesn't do it justice, but basically Cebius is a massive city planet. If I was to relate it to anything as far as what the closest item would be, I would say it would be roughly equivalent to Coruscant from Star Wars. I say roughly equivalent, but not like a 1-to-1 copy or anything like that, but it would be roughly equivalent to it. It's got the Council of the 9. It's got a Senate chambers. Let's see if I got a link over to that. Okay, yeah, that planet hosts the Galactic Senate of the UGW, where each member race gets 1 vote. Another correlation to that would be kind of like the Senate, like in Star Wars. If you watch the original or the prequels, you saw them fly, around those flying saucer ships, and they're round things, and you have the senator or the governmental representative and a bunch of sidekicks and helpers and stuff like that, and the thing would detach and float out, and they would do their thing and float back and reattach and stuff. That's similar to this, but they don't have the flying ships like in Star Wars. That's a cool little gimmick, but they don't have that. What they do have is they have like little booths that you climb into, and you do everything out of there. And if others need to see you and hear you, they've got a speaker system that projects your voice all the way across the Senate chambers, and you can also be projected holographically to these people. They hear in their own language, they speak in their own language, and thanks to the universal translators, everybody can understand everybody else. Now, one thing about the UGW is it's been around since the War of the 9. Like any large governmental organization with huge amounts of power, it by the time of Earthfleet Saga has become extremely corrupt. it is, like seriously corrupt. It still functions. It still does its intended job, which is, keeping peace in the galaxy, especially between the Nine, because let's not have the War of the Nine Part 2. So, you've got that going on. And like I say, they still work, even though they're very, very broken by that point in time. And at the end of book 2, they end up crumbling, because once their corruption is revealed to the world or to the galaxy, everybody abandons Cebius. Well, and there's more reasons than that for abandoning Cebius, but they they abandon the planet, get everybody else off if they can, and then they go later on and they take the people off the planet and send them off to the respective republics and confederacies and federations and all that kind of stuff, and empires and things like that, before they're brought back with the ASW, or Alliance of Sentient Worlds, which is just basically the UGW version 2, because they change up things, like they get rid of the Council of the Nine because they found out that was actually more counterproductive than productive, so they got rid of them. In the ASW, they, basically everybody has an equal voice. That includes the 9 races. They don't have special privilege where they technically have more than one vote, and stuff like that, like they do in the UGW. But again, they got to where they did, and having all that extra representation in the UGW, because not all, not some of them, but not all of them were very good at greasing the palms of the president of the UGW, and they were able to. Well, they had the original war, which kind of helped them get a bunch of stuff, but then there was other things along the way that were helped by the fact that they had access to the leadership of the UGW, and he was able to, or they were able to talk him into letting them have like a greater representation in the Senate, because they're a larger republic, and they said, okay, yeah, you can do that and stuff. But then, like I say, in the ASW, you can't do that. Everybody gets one vote, period. Sorry, dry throat. But anyways, everybody gets one vote. Doesn't matter if you're from the 9 or if you're from some backwater planet at the edge of the galaxy, with only a handful of people and colonists and stuff like that. They don't care. If you're a member of the ASW, which most of them who came from the UGW became members of the ASW. Some of them just stayed out. Some stayed out permanently. Some stayed out for a short while because they were kind of wondering, okay, how is this going to turn out? And if we jump in, are we going to have to try and straighten out the mess that, because anytime you start a new organization, it's always going to be a mess until everybody figures things out and the gears start rolling again. So, let's see if there's anything else I want to mention about that. There's a lot I can mention about it, but some of it's actual spoilers for books, so I'm trying not to tell it. I'm only telling relevant information that if I tell you this, it's not going to really hurt. It's not going to hurt your experience when reading the books. And if anything, it might help them, because it'll give you a larger insight into what's going on in the story and the backstory and all of that. Excuse me. Yeah, rough day. Lots of sinuses and stuff. Anyways, it's also the UGW and some of the evil and politicking that goes on in the background that led to Earth being given kind of a stay put order. Another way to describe that is basically they were put under house arrest and got an ankle monitor, strapped to them. That's essentially that's essentially what they did with Earth. Is just out of the blue one day, and I didn't fully explore this. It was just you kind of came to understand that as things went along. But just no good reason, out of the clear blue, they slapped Earth basically with a restraining order and ankle cuffs, or an ankle monitor and stuff like that, so to speak, figuratively. Let's see. Yeah, see, the ASW has a different planet. It's called BR. It's located in neutral space too. Let me see. Let me go back to the ambassadorial towers. Okay, this one's interesting because the ambassadorial towers is part of the operation of CBS. CBS is the seat of government for the UGW, and it's a complete city world. The whole planet is one gigantic city. Well, the ambassadorial towers, this monstrosity, this absolutely massive building, and I actually see, this is the best picture I could get for it. Really, the one I see it's wider and larger than this, and the building tapers off going up. The building itself is broken up into 4 basic areas. Let me go over here. Species. Because you got the different species here. Avianoid, insectoid, humanoid, mammalian. Mammalian is kind of the general. It's not specific like the avianoid or the reptoid or the aquanoid. It's more of a generic or general classification. Yeah, you got aquanoid, reptoid, xenopoid. Xenopoid's one of those, that's a species type which is kind of the catch-all drawer for everybody. If you don't fit in one of the above items, then they throw you into the xenopoid designation, because you're not human, you're just one of those species, but they're not sure what to call you, basically. I know, don't call me late to dinner, right? But, doggone it. Oh, that's right, I'm on it. I can try that again. There we go. The senatorial towers, which belong to the ASW, is essentially the same building, just on a different planet, for a different organization. So I ended up using the same artwork for this, but they're both basically the same. One of the cool things about them, although the one on CBS was better, both of them have a large senatorial ballroom. And basically that ballroom is there for them to party, have special events, have meetings, rubbing shoulders, stuff like that. It's for social gatherings and dances and balls and stuff like that, so they can get the different species and the different ambassadors meeting each other and mingling and stuff like that. Like I say, this place houses the 4 basic core species types. Like aquanoid has to have its own special part of the towers because of the fact that they are aquatic or semi-aquatic. Insectoids would have a slightly different one. Humanoids, which kind of falls under mammalian, because they're subcategories of humans, they would have their own, and then xenopoid would have its own, and there could be a lot of custom spaces in there. You'll see those guys walk. The ones that can't live in normal Earth-type atmosphere, you're going to see them running around in either breathers or spacesuits, because some of them, their home planet has a lot higher relevant pressure and a lot more weight, a lot heavier gravity. So you're going to be seeing one group dressed one way to accommodate that. Say like they're used to heavier gravity and they're used to breathing a certain way, so they'll wear like a face mask or a helmet to allow them to breathe their natural air rather than what the towers produce. So the majority species in there are all either reptoid, avianoid, or insectoid, or humanoid / mammalian. So avianoids and humans can live in the same sector. Insectoids kind of need their own space, as does aquanoids and reptoids. Avianoid can live with the humans. Insectoid has to have kind of its own area. The aquanoids, their own area. Reptoids and xenoids, their own area. So, and like I say, this place is huge. like I say, this doesn't even do it proper justice of how big this thing is. This thing is just massive. I mean, think of like Los Angeles as far as square footage or square miles goes. This thing would fit in the downtown and completely shadow it. I mean, just turn the whole place into one gigantic shadow because of how big this thing is. It's massive. It's miles across in every direction. Miles across, miles high, sticks way up into the ionosphere, I think. So like I said, this one's not doing this justice. But anyways, those towers are there, and they've got let's see, Senatorial Gardens. Okay, this one's an interesting one. The Senatorial Gardens. They literally have a Central Park in the middle of this place. That's how big this thing is. Freaking huge. And like I say, they got their own Senatorial Gardens, which is basically like a miniature version of Central Park, New York. It's got trees and insects and birds and fish and wildlife and stuff like that from planets, or from the planets of the various members of the UGW. Senatorial Towers. Yeah, Senatorial Towers has kind of the same thing. Oh, but it's a little bit different because the one that they have is freshly established, whereas the one that the UGW had it's been there a while. It's not a new addition. So the new one into the ASW homeworld is still kind of green, quote unquote, no pun intended. And it's green and it's new and it's working out all the bugs, trying to recreate the Senatorial Gardens, but inside the ASW and on a new planet. What's funny though is you have things like the Jubaya trees. Those live in there. There's a bunch of those. This one here is a crowd favorite for the Gafano Na. They have a bunch of these, sections of this planted in the gardens where, it's controlled. You're not going to have bleed over and stuff like that. But it creates a field of grass that the Gafano Na, the ambassadors, and anyone else who happens to be there walks through. They can stop and graze for a little bit and keep walking and stuff. And when I say graze, you'll understand why here in a second. That is the Gafano Na. They are an avianoid species that is a cross between an ostrich and a duck. I kid you not, that is what they look like. They're a cross between an ostrich and a duck. This one right here, I used Midjourney to generate this one. It's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty darn close. The Gafano Na love bling. They just absolutely adore bling. So they're going to have buttons and shiny objects and lots of color and stuff. And his wings are in there. They're just tucked in underneath all this regalia. And the Gafano Na, just a little side note, came about. Let me enlarge this so you get a better view of him. There you go. Well, and you can check him out while I'm talking. But the Gafano Na are a minor single planet society within Gagvon space. The Gafano Na, otherwise primarily known as the Fondos, which is a shortening of their name. Then a name was given to them by the Gagvon. They're a single planet society, and that's all they care about. They have a lot of interesting colloquialisms that are specific and unique to their society, like they'll greet you saying "Great currents lift you up," Wing Songa, and Wing Songa is basically, we've heard the phrase before, closer than a brother. Well, that's kind of what it is for the Gafano Na when they call you Wing Songa. You are their absolute best friend. They would die for you type person. Closest human equivalent I can think of is you hear it a lot in the anime and manga for One Piece. The Nakama, I think, is what the word is, and basically it's somebody who's closer to you than a brother. They're a special friend who is extremely close to you. But anyways, The Gafanduna come into the story because I needed somebody who could balance another character, namely Fyland. But going back to here before I wander over there, the Gafanduna, like I said, they have interesting terms and colloquialisms. Like to gallow is essentially, it's a type of meeting. It can have a specific meaning, like a specific type of meeting. Generally, it's more equivalent to parley than it is to meeting. You're going there to parley, to discuss things, to negotiate, etc. like that. That's what gallowing is. Wing Sangha, like I said, they're closer than a brother. It's that kind of relationship. Great Currents. Great Currents is an interesting one because it's a generalized Gafanduna greeting, kind of like good morning, good afternoon, good evening, hello, how are you? However, it can mean a bunch of different things based on the context of the sentence. So your one word can take on 4, 5, 6 meanings depending on the content and context of the sentence that it's included in. And like Finch likes to basically say, he'll come up and say, great currents lift you up, Wing Sangha. The currents it's referring to in context in that phrase is the wind, because these guys are really, really good flyers, even though they don't look like they can fly. Then again, neither does a duck a lot of times. But the duck can still get up in the air and off you go. So they are very capable flyers. Finch, if I remember correctly, stands about 3'5", 3'6". So they're kind of short. They're not like really, really huge. They're kind of short, but they're very, very smart. And you get with Finch. Finch, when he first came into the ambassadorial towers as an ambassador under the UGW time frame, he was kind of pretty much all alone, because the Gafanduna is so small that's like Earth, that Earth has one ambassador on the UGW, or at the UGW homeworld. One, and that's Fyland. He has 2 assistants, which is Mary and Julius, and that's pretty much it. And the Gafanduna are kind of the same. You have just Finch, and then you have a couple of assistants with him. They're not mentioned in the story, but he will have a couple of assistants with him because he'll have to send people on errands, and those people will help him with his paperwork. They'll clean the apartment. They'll clean the they'll clean the apartment. They'll do errands. They'll assist that that ambassador and whatever he's doing. They'll come to him at the council meetings and things like that. They're essentially the office staff, but Finch has them. I don't think where else I want to go with this one. Well, anyways, I'll tell you this one here. Fyland Renwald. He is a top-notch negotiator. What's funny about him too is he's also really good at martial arts, and you actually get to see that a few times. And it's mostly because his dad was a hand-to-hand combat instructor for Earthfleet. So guess what? While he was growing up, his dad was running him through all the paces. So you got this guy who's like 70 years old at the start of Off-World Chronicles, which for the society living to 70, 70 is a new 20 for them basically. So you're still young. You can live. Their technology will allow you to live 200 to 300 years. Most of them don't go past 150. But they can easily live 300 years or more if they want to, using Earthfleet medical technology. It's just some people reach 150 years and are like, yeah, I'm done. And they'll tap out. But he was the first one I had, because you get to see kind of the inner workings of the UGW through his eyes. But like I say, he's a firebrand. He is a feisty dude. And I needed a balancing character, somebody who could create a softer, calmer, friendlier environment when you're around him, and somebody that could be a helper, and like I say, a balancing character, a moderating character, stuff like that. And that's where Finch comes in. And completely, to completely surprise everybody, not only did Finch become best friends with Fyland, they look after each other. He is, I like to jokingly call him a little feathery Yoda, because he's kind of that super intelligent, thoughtful type. And when you first meet him in the book, you're really impressed with him, and he's a fun character to work with. You hear a lot of avian colloquialisms, like about nests and feathers and phage and just all kinds of stuff. And here's another one too, and I'll show this to you. This ship right here is the Kavinu. It's a ship that's shaped like a bird, which, being that the Gafandona are basically hybrid ducks, having bird-shaped ships then the wings on it actually flap, which you wouldn't think that was practical for for a spaceship. But you got to remember, this was made by a avianoid species, so for them that does not seem out of line. That seems pretty normal for them to have a ship that when you're coming into land, it flaps its wings, which is not like just there for show. It actually has a practical purpose, because it helps balance the ship as it's coming into land. It helps it slow down. It helps it accelerate. It does a variety of things. Like I said, the wings change shape as needed. They can flap. They can do all kinds of stuff, and it helps the ship along. And that's, the Kavinu was given to Finch by his dad as a gift. So it's an extra, the ship is really special to him because, it was given to him by his dad, and he takes really good care of that ship. But the really funny part about it, which is why I went this direction, is the seating in his ship are nests. I kid you not, they are nests. So they're, like if you've seen like a robin's nest, and it's got all that straw and grass and twigs and stuff all kind of bundled up into this neat little circular ball with a dent in the center for the eggs to go and the mama to sit. That's kind of their seats. All of their seats are nests. Their beds are nests, because for the Gafandona, that's completely normal for everything to be like that. Which is kind of funny, because Julius and Mary end up going on a mission with Finch and Fyland in book 3, and the look on the face of Julius when he walks in and sees the bed, and it's like, you intend for me to sleep in that thing? Because like I said, it's a gigantic nest, but it's a Fondo-sized nest. Fyland comments about that, like, yeah, well, I've done enough red eyes with him. I'm kind of used to it by now. And he uses the Kavinu from time to time with Finch's permission. I mean, Finch goes along, but they will jump in that ship and go places, and nobody really thinks anything about it. While he, because they generally don't expect Fyland to be on there, even though Fyland gets on the ship with Finch and goes to places that he needs to go. Never try to do a recording on a dry throat. It's horrible. But anyways, Finch was, like I say, originally created as a balancing character. Generally, with balancing characters, which I've already explained basically what they are and what they do, balancing characters usually don't get a lot of screen time. They don't get a lot of dialogue. They're kind of just there to fill a need and solve an issue, etc., etc. So they don't need to be seen a lot. You don't need to hear a lot from them, because they're just there to add either extra depth to the character they're balancing, or to give them a source of dialogues. Like, you can talk between, the two of them can talk back and forth and explain things to the reader and stuff like that. So they're useful, but they generally don't get a lot of screen time in a book. Finch was entirely different. As I was writing it, I began to realize that I can't just make him a filler character or a balancing character. I have to kind of make him his own thing. And the hilarious part is Finch is a character, like I say, he was a filler character, he was a disposable character when I originally created him. I did not expect him to become a major character. That was never my intention. He was the balancing character. He was only supposed to do just enough to balance Phyland, but as I kept writing, I realized I can't just leave him as a balancing character. I have to make him a main character. I mean, he still has his job of balancing Phyland, but he has a more important role, as a mainline character than he would as a filler character. This then brings in Tails, Falcon, Wind Whisper, and Sailor. These guys are scientists, and the reason you hear about them is because one of the things you see when you first meet Finch is he's wearing an external universal translator hanging off his head, which, if you know anything about the head of a duck, mounting one of those things is going to be an ever-living nightmare / challenge. And they go to Earthfleet, or not even Earthfleet, they go to the Society upon Finch's recommendation. And the Society tries to figure out, okay, how can we give these guys an embedded universal translator? Because this thing is literally wet-jacked into your brain and your body and stuff. I could walk up to, and this universal translator is so effective. I could walk up to someone and, like I'm speak English, they speak Japanese, and the universal translator can work one of two ways. Either it can translate what I want to say into the language of the other person, and that comes out my lips, or I say it, they hear it, it's translated into their language so they understand it, and then when they speak to me in return, I hear it, it's translated, and I understand what they said, because they could walk up and and my Japanese is horrible by now, so forgive me for those of you who speak Japanese if I absolutely butcher this, but it would be like I walk up to a Japanese person and I've got this embedded translator, and let's say they don't, it will go and default to the auto translation thing where you're doing all the back and forth translating, they're just hearing and talking. Like I could walk up to somebody that's Japanese and say "Ohayo gozaimasu," like "Watashi wa skoshi," something like that. I like I say, I've forgotten most of my Japanese, so forgive me for butchering that, but you get the idea. Anyways, that those are a very important part in this. Some of them, like I say, they're embedded universal translators. They're implanted right into the skull with the microphone and the listening device and the translation and all that stuff run natively. And like I say, you can translate one of those two ways. The issue that the Fondos had was the way their body is set up. Their brain has 3 lobes. You have the normal left and right brain, but then the center brain is like an avionics package, and that's kind of how it functions, is an avionics package. And the Gafandonad don't have, they're on their homeworld, they're primitive enough. They never discovered and developed warp power and FTL flight and stuff like that. They picked that up kind of secondhand from the Geek Von, and then they reverse engineered it and built their own, just like Earthfleet did. But yeah, the Fondos are really, really smart. They also have really weird quirks. Like, one of the things Finch will do is when he is thinking, he'll preen himself. That's just, like we'll twiddle our thumbs and stuff like that, walk around the room. He just sits there and preens himself while he's thinking. Then if he thinks of something, he'll pop his head up, say it, and go back to preening himself. Just something that they do. I think what else there is. Anyways, those 4 come to Earth, and the Society works with them to figure out how to create these universal translators, how to embed them and do it safely so you don't brain damage the person while you're doing it. Because that center lobe is very, very sensitive, so you got to be sure of the placement of the unit, how it's wet wired into the brain, etc., etc., etc. So, try to think if there's anything else I want to cover with that. Going back to Earthfleet, like I was saying, that this all just kind of came out of nowhere with that, that restriction to stay home, which was done by the main villain, who you don't really see much of, but you start hearing about him. You don't really see him in any detail until the second book. You don't see anything of him in the third book. You see a whole bunch of them in the fourth book. So, but the first book, it's kind of hinted that they're out there, and you find out more about them in the second book. But they're the reason for the isolation order, where basically the entirety of Soul Space is under house arrest, and don't you dare come out, which they do anyways, because the ship killers have really top-notch cloaking, so they can go anywhere they want to, and more. And I'll have to explain this to Genius on my next video, or one of my next videos. Those ship killers have got just some really amazing toys on them. I don't think if there's anything else I want to cover, because I'm at 36 minutes right now. If there's anything I want to cover on the UGW, I know it's a very busy planet, because if you look at book 2, they have a hard time coming in to the planet because there's just so much traffic above it and around it. But I'll also try to cover some of the other races, some of the major races, minor races stuff, in the next video. I can't really, I'm working on the Fondos just because they are front and center in the original book, and then there's one of the main characters who is a Fondo, and like I say, I'm not even doing him justice, just how cool this guy is. I'll have to try to remember to read you guys like one of his pieces of dialogue, because he's funny. Like I say, he's got avian colloquialisms, just and not just colloquialisms, but colloquialisms, euphemisms. There's one other one, and I can't think of what it is, but it's just, the way they speak is really interesting. But like I say, it's heavily seeded with stuff from the Gafondos, from Fondo Society and stuff. Let me think. Oh, well, I've got it on my mind. Since you're... Oops. Try that again. Oops. There. Now, the Junah, since we're talking about politics, they are reptoid species. That's supposed to be a gecko. Doesn't really look like a gecko. It looks more like a frog with a grin. But they're a gecko-like race. They're the Laurentians. And the majority of the Junah are the Laurentians, but there's a saying about them that not every Laurentian is a Junah, but just like not every Junah is a Laurentian, but they are the majority species in both cases. And Laurentians aren't actually bad. Their numbers are just disproportionately higher in the Junah than other races. One of the other races you meet at the beginning is the Sarians. They are gigantic, anthropomorphic vampire bats, is what they are. Now, the interesting thing is, in a book I have coming up called The Delta Riders, you have Daroth. Come on, baby. Okay, she's grinding. Second, try it again. There it is. I haven't filled this guy in, but he's actually a good Sarian. The majority of the Sarians are nasty, bad, detestable. They work for the Junah Lords as a variety of jobs, spying especially. There are some though that are very noble, very honorable, very kind, considerate, so forth and so on. Like Daroth, he's going to be the helmsman for the Delta Star from Delta Riders, and once I get that book done or further along, I'll explain some of that to you. But they're mostly bad, but there are a few good apples, and then in some of the other races you could have a few bad apples, and the rest of them are good. Well, Cerador is one of the bad ones. Daroth is one of the good ones. Their naming convention's interesting. Like was Cerador. He'll introduce himself as, I am Ceradoc of the nest of Cerador of the nest of Noidoc. So basically, their last name is, or they'll give you their first name, which in his case is Cerador, and their last name, which is their affiliation, and that is the nest of Noidoc. When they say the nest of Noidoc, it's generally not, that's your family or anything like that. It's kind of like saying, I am Stephen of Battle Creek, Michigan, essentially. It's not a family, it's like a group. And his, Cerador's primary allegiance is in the nest of Noidoc, and I spelled that wrong. Some people are probably wondering why it was next instead of nest. Anyways, that's better. But yeah, anyways, that's how they work. What was the other one I had? We've covered the Gafando Na. Like I said, they play a big part in the series. They were supposed to be Finch was supposed to be a minor balancing character, and that was it. And I wasn't going to really explore them. But then as the first story developed, I realized I couldn't ignore him. He has very useful parts to play in the story, and then he eventually became a main character. And I figured everybody's going to like Phylan, and I love Phylan. He's great. He's grumpy, but he's great. I love him. No. Phylan basically got tossed to the curb because almost nobody talks about him when they read the books. They're all talking about Finch, which is hilarious. As I didn't originally plan for him to become big like that, but everybody just loves Finch. But yeah, like I said, that's the Sarians. Like I say, a lot of Sarians work for the Junah, which is part of why they have such a bad reputation. You have the Gafando Na. They're very cool. They're a very nice, very interesting race. A lot of avian gestures and colloquialisms and things like that. But they are actually very nice people, birds, but people. And they do a lot to move the story forward. But anyways, I'll start covering some of the other races. There's a bunch of them out there that are like really, really cool. The races. Yeah, so like right here, this is all the different ones. You got the the 9. You've got some of the smaller single planet and small republic type races, extinct races. Now the Seventh are an interesting race. They're one I'm going to show you real quick. They're very similar to the Yiddish. Yet, according to galactic understanding, the Seventh, the Yiddish, and the there's one other one that's similar to this. They all look like they come from the same parent species, but they don't. Yeah, because like I say, you have you have the Sevedith. You have the Yiddish, and there was one other one I can't remember. They all look really similar, just like they're like they're descended from each other, but they're actually not. They came about in a different way, but all three of them share a lot of similarities. You can actually swap a Sevidith with a Yetish, and unless unless you know what to look for, you're not going to tell the difference. But yeah, anyways, there's a lot of different races in here. One of my new favorites is the Thrawn. Some people have kind of described him as a cross, or as basically what is it? It's Guardians of the Galaxy. Crass or Krog or whatever his name is. I can't remember what he is. He's the big muscle dude with the anger issues. But they say he kind of looks like a cross between him, and I'm kind of like, not really. But what's funny about him is his race is actually kind of a blending of, that one guy from Guardians of the Galaxy. Man, I just had his name on the tip of my tongue. But it's like a cross. It's a blending of bits and pieces from, Guardians of the Galaxy, bits and pieces from Star Wars, like the name Thrawn and the blue skin are a nod to Thrawn from Star Wars, which I'm pretty sure you were starting to pick up on. What am I thinking of? I'm at 46 minutes anyway, so I'll leave it at that. You guys can explore more on these. This here is gonna get filled out eventually because that's a future race, and I need to do more details on it and stuff. So, anyways, yeah, I got all these different races and stuff that I'm gonna cover, and there's the one I was looking for. These guys show up occasionally throughout the parent series of the original Earthfleet saga. But then, like, you get into First Dawn, you run into Tarwin, who is an Imgadi, and the Imgadis are. Here he is. He's basically an assassin for hire, and I'm not going to say too much about him, but they're a really neat race. They're anthropomorphic bobcats, and they. They have this ongoing rival with the Bondians, and it's hilarious. Let's see. These right here, they're anthropomorphic walruses, basically, and they have this running, rivalry with them that I never really explained because it's kind of like, why would you explain it? And if you did, it would sound stupid. Just like a lot of rivalries are, the bad rivalries are centered more around stupidity than they are anything else. So, again, another draw from real life. But again, I'm over time by 3 minutes, so I'll let you guys go, and we'll pick up on this again next time. And I think what I will do is I will cover the Sergenius and the Samurai, because they're both pretty similar. I'll cover them in the next video and some of what they are, some of the technology behind them, especially fluidic armor. That stuff's neat as all get out. And get you guys up to speed on that. So, just like before, thank you for listening and watching.